Would you like to buy a Lamborghini for the price of a Honda Civic? I think it's an obvious answer, right? And that's not to take anything away from a Honda Civic. They're great vehicles, but a Lamborghini is clearly in a different class. So my question is, why do people, when they're getting poor service, try to get better service somewhere else, but don't want to pay for it? It's the same thing, and it's something that I haven't understood for quite a while, but I want to talk about that a little bit today. The saying goes, you get what you pay for. And I think in a majority of cases throughout my life, that has held true. There's obviously cases where it doesn't. There's things that you can get at a better price and still have a ton of value. But for the most part, you do get what you pay for. Being the owner of a service company, this is a situation that I've run into many times over the years. A company and owner is not happy with their current accounting solution for various reasons. They come to us because they want better service, they want more value, and they can get that, but for some reason, they're not willing to pay for it. And that's something that I've just seen over and over again, and that's what I want to talk about today. But I don't want to just sit here and complain about it, because that does no good to anybody. What I want to talk about and why I'm making this video is specifically for other businesses, more specifically service companies that are selling a service, and how they can combat some of this and maybe some things that they can do to not run into this issue quite as much. So the first is, are we educating our prospective clients enough on the value that our service can bring? As the owner of the business, we know the value that our services can bring, but we can't just assume that because someone is coming to us and they're not getting good service from someone else, we can't just assume that they're going to understand the value that we can bring. It's our job as the owner of the business, as the person developing business, to educate that person on the value we can bring, help them see the value so that they're willing to pay more for the services. Think about it. If we don't show them the value, if they don't understand it, then why would they pay more? Just because their old solution isn't working? Of course not. We need to show the value and get them to understand the value and the investment that they're making so they're willing to pay more for the services that we're offering. So that's the first thing. We need to all start to look in the mirror and see how we can do better. In addition to that, I think it's okay to point out gaps in service from their current provider. But where I think it's not okay is to just bash that person, to not really talk about yourself and how you can help, but just to bash that person, say what a terrible job that they did in a way to build yourself up and get them to buy from you simply by putting the other person down. The reality is we don't really know the whole situation. Maybe the client was actually at fault for a lot of it. Maybe they weren't getting the information to them. Maybe they weren't communicating well. They weren't responsive. And then of course the service is going to look bad. But the other person who was providing the service, maybe it was just a result of a bad client. So I think it's important not to just immediately just push the other person down, to bash them, to try to get it. Like I said, it's okay to point out gaps and pain points, but there's a difference between that and just putting somebody down to build yourself up. And also, when you do that, people are catching on to that, and they're going to see right through you if you try to do that. Listen, we're going to run into situations where people just aren't willing to pay. I came up with this example, and it makes me chuckle a little bit, but I feel like there were certain situations over the years where I could offer someone $10,000, in return they give me $1,000, and they would still say no, which is crazy, but it's probably true on some level, and that's okay. That really is okay. But I think it starts with looking in the mirror, me doing a better job of educating on the value that I can bring, not just immediately bashing the other person and not talking about the things that I can do. And if we kind of start to do those things, I feel like we can really start to show the value that we can bring and avoid these conversations where price is the biggest issue. I think on the flip side, when we're sitting on the other side of the table, I think we all can do a better job of not going to buy a Lamborghini and bringing cash enough to buy a Honda Civic. Just doesn't make sense. It's not going to work. to expect to get the highest level of service at the same price that we're paying for now for terrible service just doesn't make any sense. If we want better service, chances are we're going to have to pay for that. I think we need to all can do a better job about realizing that and understanding that. So my question to you is, how well are you doing explaining the value of the services or products that you offer? Is there something you could be doing better? Have you run into this issue that I'm talking about and just immediately point the finger at the other person? Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror and found ways to better educate them to show the value so that they're willing to pay for your service or your product? I hope this video was helpful. Hopefully it got you thinking a little bit. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you in the next one.